Prime Minister Mark Carney is headed back to Washington for his second high-stakes Oval Office meeting.
How many times the Prime Minister can go and sit in the Oval Office or anywhere else and have a conversation with the President and not have something concrete?
As Donald Trump had just very different ideas and aims for the relationship, because he believes Canada, quite frankly, should be subservient to the United States. And I don't think any amount of goodwill is going to change that.
That question captures the mood across Canada tonight. Mark Carney is once again flying to Washington, promising results, but carrying little more than wishful thinking. Factories are closing, workers are losing hope, and the so-called off-ramp he keeps talking about remains invisible. Steel towns are quiet. Auto plants in Ontario stand half idle as production shifts south. Trump's tariffs are doing exactly what he wanted, bringing jobs back to American soil. Carney insists this meeting will deliver progress, yet Canadians have heard that line before. Each handshake and photo opportunity has yielded nothing. Every act of goodwill from Ottawa has only run into the same wall: Trump's determination to keep the upper hand. Behind the scenes, Carney's advisors are scrambling to manage expectations. Leaks from inside Ottawa suggest even the government knows the chances of a breakthrough are slim. Officials are now framing the trip as a continuation of dialogue, a quiet way to lower the bar before results are judged. Yet to ordinary Canadians, that sounds like defeat before the first meeting even begins. Canada should become the 51st state. Trump's remark wasn't random, it revealed his worldview. For him, Canada isn't an equal partner, but a dependent economy tied to America's orbit. The comment came just as both sides prepared to discuss defense cooperation, showing how deeply Trump links trade, power, and sovereignty. Meanwhile, Carney keeps pretending everything can be solved under the existing trade framework. He talks about stability, about review processes and cooperation, while Washington quietly tightens the screws. When tariffs hit steel, aluminum, and autos, Trump called it reciprocity. When Canadian jobs vanished, he called it success. The pattern is clear. Trump dictates, Carney adjusts, and with every adjustment, Canada slips deeper into dependence. Even the so-called allies in Washington are showing little sympathy. American governors from border states have already warned that they won't support tariff exemptions unless Canada makes new concessions on energy and supply chains. What once was a partnership of equals is now a series of ultimatums. Carney may call it negotiation, but to most observers, it looks more like submission dressed up as diplomacy. Back home, the frustration is boiling. The opposition hammers Carney for broken promises, accusing him of weakness and failure. Workers demand strength, not speeches. No more concessions, the unions warn. Carney's problem is simple. He's running out of excuses. His government talks about defending Canadian interests, yet the numbers tell a harsher story. Automakers are investing billions in new American plants, while Canadian facilities remain shuttered. The Prime Minister now faces an economy that's shrinking and a political base losing patience. To make matters worse, he's preparing a tighter budget while food and housing prices keep climbing. It's a dangerous combination, a leader under pressure at home heading into a meeting abroad where he holds none of the cards. That's the cold truth of this standoff. Trump thrives on confrontation. Even with unrest at home and chaos in Washington, he projects control. His message never changes: America first, everyone else second. Carney goes to this meeting hoping to find relief, but reality suggests otherwise. There is no off-ramp, no secret formula, no polite conversation that can undo Trump's tariff machine. The president holds all the leverage, and he knows it. For Ottawa, this trip is not a negotiation, it's a test of endurance. And for Canadians, it's another reminder that under Trump's America First, Canada remains in the passenger seat.
We're over the shock, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves.
Both Canada and Mexico want to save North America-wide free trade, but they both know that they can't control what the U.S. does. So there's also an effort to grow bilateral trade between Canada and Mexico, which is still tariff-free.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has been everywhere but home. One week it is Mexico, the next week Europe.
Prime Minister has just arrived in Europe. Mark Carney will spend the next few days meeting with political leaders to discuss securing a ceasefire for Ukraine. He's also shoring up economic alliances in the face of President Donald Trump's trade war.
Always with the same message: Canada can somehow break free from dependence on the United States. Cameras capture him shaking hands in Warsaw, smiling in Berlin, and sitting down in Mexico City with CEOs. To the casual viewer, it might look like leadership. Scratch the surface and you see a prime minister in panic mode, running from crisis to crisis, desperate to prove he has a plan. He talks about corridors, partnerships, frameworks. He collects communiques and photo ops. Diplomacy fills the album. The grocery cart tells a different story. Families are paying more and getting less. If a strategy is measured by outcomes, not slogans, what exactly has changed for Canadians since this whirlwind began? Almost nothing. While Carney hops planes, Canadian households are stuck with the bill. Trump's reciprocal tariffs continue to hit steel, aluminum, autos, and a long tail of inputs that raise costs across the economy. China retaliates on canola and other farm exports, squeezing producers who already face higher fertilizer, equipment, and transport costs. Ottawa's answer was to quietly scrap many retaliatory tariffs on American goods right before the Europe trip. Supporters said it was pragmatic. Critics called it surrender. Either way, import prices are still elevated, supply chains are still disrupted, and exporters are still boxed in by two giants. Carney promised to stand elbows up against Washington. Instead, he folded early and asked Canadians to carry the burden at the checkout line. That is not strategy. That is cost shifting dressed up as diplomacy. Every week that passes, more businesses warn they cannot hold out much longer. The partners Carney pins his hopes on are hardly stable. Europe is distracted. France just watched a government collapse. Britain is wobbling with its own political fractures. These are not pillars ready to rescue Canada from a tariff storm. And Mexico, the other supposed escape hatch, is playing a careful game. Ottawa talks about a bilateral trade corridor and a united front for the 2026 USMCA review. On the ground, Washington is signaling openings for Mexico that Canada does not enjoy. If Mexico gets relief while Canada waits, the North American playing field tilts further. It means capital and supply chains chase certainty south, not north. Meanwhile, Europe wants critical minerals and energy assurances from Canada, but is in no position to shield Ottawa from Trump's tariff architecture. The truth is simple: every partner is negotiating for themselves first. Canada arrives with good intentions and leaves with nice press releases, but no real leverage. Carney's whirlwind diplomacy looks impressive on a map. At home, the cracks are wider. The economy is under pressure, exporters are blocked, and consumers face persistent price pain. The grand plan to outmaneuver Trump has not materialized into leverage. It has backfired into dependency. Canada is stuck between an America that sets the terms and a China that punishes without hesitation. The Prime Minister's answer is more travel, more panels, more statements about working groups and future frameworks. None of that pays the utility bill or rescues a shipment stuck behind a tariff wall. The verdict is clear. After all the rushing around, Canada is exactly where it started, only more tired and more expensive. The world is moving fast. Canada is spinning its wheels. And it is ordinary citizens who are paying for a strategy that confuses motion with progress, while their leader mistakes movement for victory. Frustration is building, and patience is running out. For many Canadians, the question is no longer whether Carney's plan works, it is whether he ever had one in the first place.
Mark Carney says we are in the worst economic crisis of our time.
The economy is deteriorating fast. Unemployment is going up quickly, and that's not going to stop. There's a lot of things we don't know. We don't even know if in 6 months the US will still want to renegotiate CUSMA.
The shock is no longer hidden. Canada's economy is stumbling badly, and the weakness can no longer be disguised. Growth is slowing, job numbers are sliding, and the federal budget has been pushed back to November 4th. What was sold as a strategic delay now looks like panic. While Trump keeps tariffs firmly in place, Ottawa is caught in a spiral of shrinking options. The message is clear. Washington holds the leverage, and Canada is stuck waiting for instructions. Carney's speeches about resilience ring hollow when households see groceries costing more and jobs evaporating. The reality on the ground is a sharp contrast to the photo ops abroad. Instead of stability, Canada faces a moment of reckoning, where the weight of U.S. tariffs collides with a fragile economy at home.
And Canada's been a very difficult country to deal with over the years, and we have all the cards. Economically, we have such power over Canada.
The core of the crisis is trade. Trump's reciprocal tariffs have squeezed Canada's export engine. Factories are idling, unemployment is rising, and forecasts warn the deficit could top $100 billion. Ottawa's response has been cosmetic cuts, promising a 15% trim stretched over 3 years. But 2/3 of spending is exempt, leaving only token savings against a fiscal hole that grows larger by the month. Trump, meanwhile, uses tariffs not as a punishment, but as a weapon of negotiation. Canada and Mexico are reminded daily that the United States can dictate the terms. Each meeting in Washington becomes a reminder of who truly sets the agenda. Carney's insistence that Canada is protected under existing agreements has aged poorly. When the U.S. signals that renegotiation is on the horizon, Canada has little to offer but concessions. The policy has backfired, and Trump's position only grows stronger.
Economic weakness is one problem, but political instability compounds the damage. Chrystia Freeland's resignation from cabinet removes one of the few recognizable figures in Carney's economic team. Other ministers are shuffled into diplomatic postings, leaving gaps at the heart of government. Instead of projecting confidence, the reshuffle exposes a fragile coalition. Canadians can sense when a government is running to keep up rather than leading. Carney's whirlwind trip to Mexico was billed as proof of international engagement. In reality, it underscored how little control Ottawa has over events. Busy looking busy has become the national joke. While Washington dictates tariffs and sets negotiation terms, Ottawa clings to symbolic trade missions that change nothing for families watching bills pile up. Each announcement of a cabinet change or a foreign visit feeds the perception of drift. For Trump, it means even less resistance when he presses his demands.
Everything now converges on the November budget. This is the moment where promises meet arithmetic, where speeches collide with numbers that no longer add up. If Carney delivers a budget that looks timid or evasive, the political cost will be immediate. Opposition parties are already wary of supporting a document that may reveal a triple-digit deficit. The fear of sticker shock is real, and the government risks losing credibility not just in Parliament, but with ordinary Canadians who sense the backfire firsthand. Trump's strategy is far simpler. By keeping tariffs in place and forcing Canada to negotiate from weakness, he ensures Washington never loses leverage. The budget in Ottawa will not change that equation. Unless Carney finds a way to reverse the slide, Canada will enter the winter weaker, more divided, and more dependent on U.S. goodwill than ever before. The conclusion is unavoidable. What was meant to be a show of Canadian strength has turned into a policy collapse. The backfire is here, and it is hitting Canadian families hardest.
It's a rupture. The U.S. is fundamentally transforming all of its trading relationships, not just with Canada. The effect is profound. It's displacing workers. It's disrupting supply chains. It's causing immense uncertainty that's curbing investment and increasing unemployment. We're over the shock.
Carney's polished speeches could not hide the reality. Canada has just been forced into a cycle of rate cuts, not because of economic strength, but because of the crushing blow from Washington. Trump's reciprocal tariffs have cornered Canada in a way no strategy from Ottawa could prevent. The second quarter numbers made it impossible to ignore. Growth turned negative. Exports to the United States collapsed, erasing the illusion that Canada could ride out this storm untouched. Families are now caught in the middle of a trade fight they never asked for, yet they are the ones paying the heaviest price. Trump framed the tariffs as fairness. In practice, they stripped Canada of its most vital lifeline, cross-border trade. While Trump boasts of American leverage, Carney stands exposed with nothing but hollow promises to cushion the damage. The Bank of Canada had no choice but to slash the key lending rate to 2.5%, the first cut since March. This was not a move of confidence. It was a desperate attempt to soften the blow of a weakening economy. The labor market tells the story better than any speech. In just 2 months, 100,000 Canadian jobs disappeared. Households who once felt secure now face the fear of layoffs and shrinking paychecks. The economic blow is not abstract. It is visible in every factory town and every shipping hub tied to U.S. markets. As an economist from RBC put it, the tariff hit has been very pronounced but concentrated. Certain regions and industries are being gutted, while others watch nervously, knowing they could be next. Instead of a coordinated national response, Carney's government is leaning on monetary policy, leaving the central bank to do the heavy lifting. That is not leadership, it is retreat.
Across the border, the picture is very different. The U.S. economy continues to show resilience, even as tariffs filter into consumer prices. Inflation has ticked higher because companies pass costs on to shoppers, but growth is still holding. The Federal Reserve is set to cut rates too, yet their move comes under Trump's relentless political pressure rather than an economic collapse.
Yes, the U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to cut rates. And the interesting thing about that is they probably don't have to. The U.S. economy has been doing okay.
The contrast is striking. Americans are paying more at the checkout line, but Canadians are paying with their jobs. Manufacturing output is shrinking, exports are stalling, and the housing market is clouded by uncertainty. One country shoulders higher prices, the other loses livelihoods. Trump can afford to play hardball because his domestic economy still has strength. Canada, by contrast, is stumbling, reacting instead of leading. Carney's promises of resilience now ring hollow against the hard numbers, and his credibility is slipping fast. What emerges is a clear imbalance of power. Trump sets the rules, Canada scrambles to adapt. Each new tariff pushes Ottawa further into defense mode. Each new job loss chips away at household confidence. And each new cut in rates signals desperation rather than strategy. Carney pledged stability, but the results are brutal: shrinking exports, vanishing jobs, and a government that seems perpetually one step behind events. Canadians are watching their economy falter while the man in Washington tightens the screws. This is not a trade victory for Canada. It is the opposite. Trump has won the upper hand, and Carney's response has backfired. The evidence is on every pay stub, every mortgage statement, and every factory floor. The cost of this failure is measured in lost growth and lost work, and the worst may still lie ahead for Canadian families.
Doubling production at the LNG Canada plant in Kitimat is one of the 5 major projects unveiled by Ottawa Thursday, getting fast-tracked approvals and potentially federal funding.
We know we can't control what other nations do. So we're focused on what we can control, building our strength right here at home.
Mark Carney stood in front of cameras and promised Canadians a new era. LNG, he said, would turn Canada into an energy superpower. Ottawa fast-tracked 5 so-called nation-building projects, and at the top of the list sat LNG Canada in Kitimat. The government bragged about doubling production, becoming the second-largest facility of its kind in the world, and diversifying Canada's markets beyond the United States. On paper, it looked like a bold plan to fight back against Trump's tariffs. In reality, it exposed cracks that Carney could not control. From day one, the announcement triggered backlash. Instead of uniting Canadians, LNG became a lightning rod for division, doubt, and distrust.
The first blow came from within British Columbia. The Union of BC Indian Chiefs blasted the project, saying there had been no real consultation with First Nations before Ottawa pushed it forward. Carney had promised reconciliation, yet the most high-profile project under his watch ignored the very people living on the land. That hypocrisy is now front and center. Then there is the money. A project of more than $30 billion relies heavily on private capital. Ottawa is dangling modest incentives, but the reality is clear. Without massive outside funding, Kitimat cannot move forward at the speed Carney promised. Instead of projecting strength, the LNG flagship highlights Ottawa's dependence on corporate investors and weakens confidence that Canada can truly deliver, raising fears that taxpayers will ultimately be left covering ballooning costs and cleaning up the political fallout.
Out west, the Alberta premier looked for reassurance that pipelines would follow. All she got was a vague nod to a carbon capture project on a secondary list. For Alberta, it sounded like delay and betrayal. For British Columbia, it looked like Ottawa was trampling Indigenous rights. Carney's strategy was supposed to shield Canada from Trump's tariffs. Instead, it has fueled interprovincial tension. Alberta sees obstruction, BC sees disrespect, and the opposition in Ottawa sees incompetence. Even as American tariffs keep squeezing Canadian industries, Carney has managed to create a crisis at home. The promise of energy independence is already backfiring into political fragmentation, exposing a prime minister unable to keep his own country aligned while pretending to face down Washington. The more he insists on calling this leadership, the more Canadians see a government stumbling, failing to deliver clarity, and leaving provinces to fight among themselves.
Carney sold LNG as the silver bullet. He told Canadians it would open doors in Europe and Asia, blunt Trump's tariff wall, and deliver tens of thousands of high-paying jobs. What Canadians are seeing instead is delay, division, and disappointment. There are no tankers filled with new Canadian LNG heading to Europe. There are no pipelines breaking ground in Alberta. There are only headlines of Indigenous leaders furious at being excluded, provinces at odds with each other, and investors waiting on the sidelines. The tariffs keep hitting, the bills keep rising, and Ottawa's grand LNG gamble looks more like a stalemate than a strategy. The truth is simple. Carney overpromised and underdelivered. He wanted to look strong against Trump, but his LNG policy is backfiring badly. Far from becoming an energy superpower, Canada risks becoming stuck, unable to move fast enough at home, and still vulnerable abroad. For families watching costs climb, for workers waiting on jobs that never arrive, this is not a vision of strength. It is the reality of a government caught between rhetoric and results. And unless something changes, Canada's so-called LNG superpower plan may go down as one of the biggest failures of Carney's time in office.